This regular meeting for November 15th to order. Ms. Huntington, will you count me present and call the roll for the council, please?
Sure thing. Rocky Hempel,
Here.
Jacob Dale,
Here.
Lorelei Stevens. She's not present. Chris Donnelly
Here.
and Jennifer McCutcheon.
Here.
Great, thank you. Would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of minutes. Anyone have any corrections or discussion about the minutes from the last meeting?
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Huntington. Moving on to item 3, the consent agenda, review of our bill payments. Any questions? Comments?
So moved.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
And a second.
Okay, I got Ms. McCutcheon first. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you. Move on. Sorry, Mr. Brakovich or Ms. Huntington, did anyone sign up to speak during open period?
No one signed up, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Moving on to old business, item A, update for event plans for the mayor's tree lighting event scheduled for Saturday.
Good evening. I think we're just here to update you, just to let you know, pretty much everything's staying the same from the last time they brought the agenda, brought this to the agenda. We did do some discussion about the COVID protocols, so I think we are going to have Santa Claus inside this year. We will have tapes on the floor for social distancing, and signs in the door for recommending masks, but it will not be required. But we will recommend that they do wear them. And then we'll also have sanitizer and wipes and things like that for sanitization.
The county recommend that we just recommend you wear a mask.
Okay.
We visited with Chief this morning about it.
Cool. Driving down 4th Street tonight was just beautiful.
Does look really
Looked
nice.
great, thank you.
Yeah, we're trying something a little different. I'm sure you saw the trees.
Yep,
Our original budget ran us short where we couldn't get every tree that had a plug-in, but with the city's help, we ordered 8 more trees today to finish it out, and they'll be here on Thursday. And so we got that. Tomorrow, the city will deliver the tree. Originally, we were gonna do it Wednesday, but they're talking about forecasts of rain, so I think they've kind of anticipate tomorrow. Everything will be in full swing as of tomorrow afternoon. I think you're gonna see a lot of changes. We added the parade this year. We've gotten pretty good response. We're blessed. We have 4 high school freshman basketball players that are gonna help organize the parade for us. We have several churches that are giving away drinks and snacks free of charge. We're gonna have a food truck. But most importantly, we wanna thank the council, Jamie, George, Dan, the fire department, the police department, the city maintenance. I don't know if you guys realize, we start meeting in June and meet every month until the last month, and then we meet 2 or 3 times. And your city staff has been absolutely wonderful to work with. They're very accommodating to us ladies. Thank you for our budget. We spend usually we're under budget. This year it's gonna be a little close with the trees, how we're gonna pull this off. But we do appreciate your support, and we hope everybody comes out on Saturday night. It should be a good time. We're gonna try something a little different this year. The mayor's gonna walk with Genesis and Tongi Elementary winning class this year. You know, they always like the tree with the mayor. Well, we've invited them and got a banner to walk in the parade to be recognized that way too. So they were real excited. Friday, we start at 1 o'clock and probably go till 3 with the canned goods. Genesis, the middle school and the elementary all participate in that. And then Mo takes care of getting it all, what goes to City Hall, storage, and what goes to the thrift shop.
It's all gonna go to the thrift
Yeah,
store this
so I think we're in pretty good shape,
year. I think so.
you know, so.
Yeah, fabulous. It's
If you
great.
have any questions, we'll be glad to answer, but we do appreciate all your support.
Council, do you have any comments or questions?
And I think we all appreciate what you guys do.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I tell you, our head decorator is Becky, and she's got her stuff together, so we're lucky.
Well, thank you. I plan to recruit Mrs. Freese to walk with me,
It's
if that's
perfectly
okay.
fine.
And I'm looking forward to it. It'll be great.
We got a really nice banner, and it says, thrift shop winner or
Annual
something.
food drive
Winner
winning
class, yeah, so
Great.
we're excited that they'll get recognized that way too, so.
Fantastic.
We're not doing choirs and we're not doing drill team performances this year, so we thought we'd just try the parade for something different,
Yeah.
because they didn't get much last year. So we're trying to make it really extra special, and George has been very beneficial in helping us with our budget this year, and we do appreciate that, so.
Well, y'all, with what we had last year, y'all did a great job with that too. It was a lot of fun.
I think we figured this is our fifth year, so.
Cool.
Till we get too old, we're willing to come back again next year.
Great. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, moving on to new business. Mr. Brakovich, can we move item A to the December 6th meeting, please?
That sounds good.
Moving on to item B, discuss request for adjustment of permitted hours for the sale of alcoholic beverages on Sundays. Mr. Brakovich?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So in the packet tonight is a letter that we received from the manager of, I believe it's Brothers Liquor Store, so, Brothers Wine and Spirits, sorry. And so what happened earlier in the legislative session this year, the state approved that if you, as a city, already allowed Sunday alcohol sales, you could move from the previous noon start time to 9 a.m. So, and then that was enacted into law in July. And so we didn't, no one approached us, and it affects retail liquor stores and CMB retailers, or cereal malt beverage. So no one approached us. Some communities considered it and didn't approve a earlier start time for sales. Some cities made the change. So now we have been approached. I believe Lindsay reached out to some of our other retailers. And did anyone respond?
No response at this point.
Okay. And I don't think we have, the person that submitted the letter isn't here tonight. So changing the city ordinance is kind of a big deal. And so before we just assumed that that was the action we wanted to take, we wanted to bring that as a discussion item to the council tonight to see if that's something you want to explore further, or is that an option that you even want to consider. And so I think that is just the basic level discussion we're hoping to have here tonight. And if there's direction to be had at the end of the discussion, we'd sure take it, so.
Council, do you have any comments or questions about this? I guess my opinion is that I do not want to be at a competitive disadvantage with anyone. So if this helps us raise money to get the liquor sale starting at 9 o'clock, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's certainly worth exploring. And I mean, it's not a whole lot more time, so I personally don't see the downside necessarily to it.
Yeah. I agree.
I wouldn't have any opposition to it.
No, me either.
Mr. Hempel?
I think you got your marching orders, George.
Okay, so we will start working on that. There's gonna be probably some time and notice consideration since we're changing ordinance. What we'll try to do is draft that, and even if there's not a step available by the next meeting, at least present you with what that's gonna look like, the calendar of events. Okay,
Great,
thank you.
thank you, Mr. Brakovich. Item C, consider approval of the expenditure of a matching funds for the purchase of a Lucas automated CPR device. Mr. Brakovich?
Yeah, while Chief Zimmelman's coming to the podium, proud to announce that the Tonganoxie Fire Department was successful in their grant application for the Leidy grant, and I don't want to steal the chief's thunder on this, so I'll turn it over to you.
This is one of the items we spoke about when we talked during the budget session on some of the ways we were trying to, I guess, provide better service to the community. And with the delays sometimes that we encounter now with Leavenworth County EMS, not to their fault. We were talking about this the other day. More rooftops, more businesses mean more demand on the EMS service. That has happened probably increasingly more and more over the last 18 months. The Lucas machine basically is a CPR machine. The American Heart Association says good CPR saves lives. This machine is proven to save lives. This is why we pursued this avenue with the Leidy grant. The matching fund is $7,203.11. We have that in our fire equipment fund. It would not put a strain on our fire equipment fund. As you guys can probably see, our fire equipment fund has done really well in the last 2 to 3 years because we've been aggressively replacing our equipment through other grants and things like that. So we're not spending money on our big ticket items because newer is better, carries warranties. We're not spending money then to repair and replace. So I ask that we match the funds of $7,203.11 to purchase a Lucas machine. The one good thing about this, I did talk to Lucas just out of curiosity with the shortages of everything. We can have this machine, have it in service within 3 weeks. And that's training all of our personnel because one thing I did forget to add, Leavenworth County EMS currently uses this machine. So a continuity of care. We start CPR, they show up, they're familiar with this machine. They use the exact same one. We just load the patient on the cot, we take theirs till we get ours back. And most of the time we have somebody riding with the ambulance on a cardiac arrest anyway, so. A continuity of care stays in place, CPR is not stopped, and I think this will give some better save rates.
Thank you, Chief. This is essentially almost like having another staff person.
Pretty much. Average CPR, the American Heart says the normal layperson or first responder can do quality CPR for 3 to 6 minutes, and they're done. And that's with two people. So this can do it for up to probably 40 minutes with 2 batteries, and we'll have 6.
Yeah.
So.
Council, do you have anything?
The only thing I have is just to make clear in the action needed, it says if use for funds not to exceed $14,406.22. Are we authorizing the $14,406 or are we authorizing the $7,203 to match the Leidy fund?
Both. So we're authorizing the total expenditure amount of that 14,000. We're just specifying that half will come from fire capital equipment, the other half is coming from a grant. Yep.
Anyone else? 7,000 is a small price to pay if we can save somebody's life. I agree. So do we have anybody have any more questions, or is there a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve an expenditure of $14,406.22, with half of that coming from the Leidy grant funding for the purchase of the requested CPR machine.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thanks for getting the grant. That's great.
Thank you, Chief. Item D, Resolution 1121-02, approving the 2021 meets and bounds of the City of Tonganoxie. Mr. Brakovich?
Yep, thanks, Mayor. So simply stated, we're required to provide the county with any potential changes to the meets and bounds. If there's not any, just reaffirming what they were from the prior year. For those folks that aren't familiar with that, that's simply the legal description or of the legal boundaries of the city limits. This year, we did in fact annex a portion. You'll probably remember the Coleman Estates addition. We did the annexation. We're still kind of waiting on that platting process to come back through, but that additional property is accounted for within the legal description that's being submitted. Again, that it's an item that's required to the county before the end of the year, but we have it in a completed form here, so we wanted to go ahead and get it out of the way. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council? Excuse me. Council? Okay. If there's no comment, I will accept a motion, entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to pass resolution, 1121-02, defining the current boundaries of the city of Tonganoxie.
Thank you, Mr. Hempel. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item E, Resolution 112103, approving policy and authorizing utilization funds from American Rescue Plan Act. Mr. Brackovich?
Yep, thanks again, Mayor. So you'll probably recall back in July when we received word that there would be an allocation coming from the Kansas State Department of Recovery, and based on our population, that the city of Tonganoxie would be receiving approximately $846,000. We, at that time, reviewed what, according to the federal guidelines, would be these broad eligible categories for expenses. And to reiterate what those are, it includes responding to public health emergency, revenue loss replacement, premium pay for essential workers, and then water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure investments. And so when we originally talked about it, we thought that kind of the two broader categories we would migrate to are premium pay for essential workers and then that utility infrastructure component. And so what we're presenting tonight is a policy that would address how the city could provide premium pay to essential workers. So in the packet is a one-page policy document that kind of in the background gives you some of the history. You'll probably remember when we did the CARES Act money, we really didn't use that towards any employee premium pay or hazard pay, which was an allowable expense. We used the $850,000 primarily in small business grants, getting this facility ready and kind of expanding and providing YouTube and getting to reach more people, increasing our transparency, I think is a big piece of it. And then we did use it to provide free public Wi-Fi within the public parks and in the expanded coverage in the public library parking lot, as they were still kind of restricting how many folks could be inside the building. So this ARPA money then allows us to really focus on a couple of areas that we weren't able to address with CARES Act. So again, starting with essential workers as defined by the federal guidelines, what we're proposing, our employees meet that definition. So really we get down to kind of the meat of the policy is how do we define eligibility for it, and then how would we pay that out? So in defining eligibility, we set out three standards. The first being you had to be a full-time employee during the period of March 1st, 2020, that's when the governor first declared a state of emergency, through December 31st of 2020. Second item is you have to be a current full-time employee. If this policy gets approved, you have to be a current full-time employee now. The third piece is the city manager's office, including the city manager, the assistant city manager, and then our department heads, fire chief, police chief, and public works superintendent are not eligible because that doesn't meet quite the definition within essential workers of who the targeted audience is for this. So those are the eligibility requirements. And you'll see in another slide, or in your packet on the second page, that impacts, we have about 21 employees of our 35 full-time that are then eligible to receive this premium pay. So how do we determine what's going to be paid in premium pay? We have an ability in our payroll system to refine down to hours worked. And so to get there, we can exclude things like vacation time, sick time, personal leave, any other type of paid leave, And we were able to add any sort of work from home or remote work options. And so we're able to remove those hours so we can definitively say for each eligible employee, there is a set amount of work hours that they had during that premium pay period. So it's each eligible employee can have a different number of hours compared to another or any other eligible employee. So it's a very refined, specific piece. What we're proposing and what you have as your second attachment is that premium pay would be a flat hourly rate that's applied to the hours worked. So what we've proposed on the low end is $1 per hour. We've shown quarter increments up to $2 per hour. There's a couple of, and we'll be required to track those costs separately. And so we've talked to our auditors to ensure that what we've proposed in the policy is acceptable to them and is in accordance with the federal guidelines, and they answered yes to both of those. So really the last piece is there's guidance by the Treasury Department that really limits what's out there. And there is a certain amount of pay per hour that you can't exceed, and the total benefit to an employee can't be more than $25,000 a year. What we're proposing we're not in any sort of jeopardy of hitting those limits. What does come into play is that the guidelines say you cannot exceed 150% of whatever's greater of the county average wage from the county in which the employee resides, or the state of Kansas average wage. And so whichever is greater. So in the policy, we list out our employees span about 5 different counties. 2 of those counties average wages are below the state average. So for eligible employees that live in those 2 counties, they would go to the state wage formula. And for the other employees, those that live in the other 3 counties, they would be subject to those county guidelines. And so of our 21 eligible employees, we only have 1 employee that would exceed that threshold. There are federal guidelines that allow for justification, and I will submit that required justification to make them eligible for the program. So that is the policy in a nutshell. The second page, like I said, is a breakout of what those costs would look like. There's a multi-column table that goes along with that. So the first column after the proposed hourly rate is the total premium pay. That's the amount that would go to the employees. So at $1 an hour, the total premium pay is just under $37,000. At $2 an hour, it's just under $74,000. The column after that is total benefit costs. So the city is eligible for our payroll costs to use the ARPA funds to cover those costs. There's a breakout box at the bottom that shows about 17.6% in payroll costs. That includes CAPERS, Social Security, Medicare, and Kansas unemployment. So we are proposing to use the ARPA funds to satisfy the city's requirements on that. So that gets you to the third column, which is a total use of ARPA funds. So that total amount we're eligible for, what does this proposal, what percentage of that total amount does this proposal absorb? So again, starting on the low end at $1, it's about 5% of our total funds, and at the $2 an hour range, it's at about 10% of the total funds. And again, it's 21 employees that are eligible for this. We also show in the last 2 columns the minimum any individual would get in each of the $1 per hour rates that are proposed, and the maximum. And so our hope is that we've answered any questions you might have about the policy itself and how we determine eligibility and how the payments are calculated. And then we would like, if you're in agreement with that, to get what your recommended flat hourly rate is so that we can apply that. Our goal is, if it gets approved tonight, to communicate in a memo to the employees giving them insight into what their premium pay would look like. That way, in case there's any income tax implications or they want to change something on their deductions. But we would propose that this would then be eligible to be on the next payroll cycle, which for us would be paid out, I believe, on November 26th. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council, do you have any questions?
Just a comment, thanks, George, for explaining it, did a good job, I thought very clear and understanding, and I think they sent that money out to us for a reason, and I think we should spend it.
I agree.
Agreed.
You would like from us a number, Mr. Brackovich, is that correct?
Yes, so what we listed as options is anywhere from $1 and then working in quarterly increments, so $1.25, $1.50, $1.75, and then up to $2. And those are the ranges that we developed, we felt was a range that was a best fit for options for our organization and the amount of money that we were receiving in total.
And we took out the part about vaccination status, correct?
Correct. This is just simply rewarding employees that are eligible for the hours they work during those timeframes.
Great, thank you. Okay,
Is that two motions, George, one for the amount and one for the resolution? Or I'm looking down the resolution, it doesn't really have any amount, so we'd have to somehow get them connected together.
Yeah, so I think as long as Anna agrees, I think the discussion gives us direction on what to plug in for the hourly amount, but the actual action item is the resolution itself.
Good with that? Okay.
sounds like you might have a motion, Mr. Donnelly.
Well, I guess the first thing would be the amount. I would suggest the $2. It's 10% of our total we got. Our employees are sure worth it, and I think it's limited to obviously to the rules provided for by the federal government, but I would recommend the $2.
Everyone agree with that?
I agree, yeah.
I do too.
Okay. Well, I make a motion that we approve resolution number 11-2103, adopting the City of Tonganoxie American Rescue Plan Act premium pay policy.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Is there a second motion? Or do we take care of all of it there? We got it all?
We're
there?
good.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Moving on to item F, discussion of draft notice to contractor for 2021 microsurfacing street maintenance project. Mr. Brackovich?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So as you recall, part of our street maintenance allocation of funds this year was to give slurry seal a try. So and again, as a reminder, it's not really a new surface. What we're doing is applying a sealant that acts to protect the existing asphalt underneath. And so we tried it in 3 areas, and I would suggest we probably had a mixed bag of results. So we started in North Star, kind of in that residential area, and then moved to Pleasant Street, and then moved to Main Street. And it is our understanding that the contractor was having some equipment difficulties by the time they got to Main Street, and they tried to finish the job to the best of their abilities. We communicated to the company and the president of the company, the owner, that we found the condition of Main Street to be unacceptable. He came and did a visit with our staff and was in agreement that Main Street was not what they would consider a quality product. So we've within our contract, we have a provision that allows the city to withhold payment until essentially we see the quality product we want. So this is a larger contract. There's separate areas that don't just include Main Street. So our discussion, and let me back up, and our contract actually does allow us to provide notice to the contractor of what our dissatisfaction is and what our proposed remedy is. And so that's what we're here to discuss tonight. If the city council wants to provide a notice to the contractor, and what specifically do we want to put in there. I will share that as staff has worked through that, we were able to, using their submittal that they gave for the RFP, kind of really isolate how many square yards Main Street involves and a total cost associated with that. And now that total cost is based on their cost that they put in the RFP, which does not bifurcate labor and material. But if we just look at the square yards at the cost they've assigned, it's about $35,000 that goes with Main Street. Typically, what we're disputing, so again, the vendor will have some costs associated with the material. They purchase material, they put it down, it's not in an acceptable condition. So what I would propose is that our issue with them is the work quality. So if we look at the labor associated with that particular portion, labor cost, since they didn't split it out, typically you see a range on labor of somewhere between 20% if you're just including direct costs to 40% if you're including indirect costs. So if we just go down the middle and say 30% of labor, of that $35,000, it's around $10,000. What we've proposed and had discussions with the contractor is to actually double that amount, so to withhold $20,000 of their payment that's due now, and he's proposed to come back and mill or grind up that surface and redo the slurry seal. And so what Anna and I were discussing is if that's an option we want to take up, to give a date certain that needs to occur by. Why it's not an option to happen this year is there's a variety of environmental factors that impact it. So in a nutshell, again, the surface temperature of the street has to be 50 degrees or above, the air temperature has to be 50 degrees or above, and we have to have an extended forecast of 3 to 4 days that provides that. And when we look at our extended forecast, we're not really seeing a stretch of 3 or 4 days that provides that. The contractor did offer to come in and mill the surface, but I think that would leave the street in worse condition. It would be a rougher finish than what we have now, and I think it would be best suited for the city to do the mill and reapply the slurry seal in a very small, short window when the environmental factors allow for that to happen. So I guess from a staff perspective, what we're suggesting is $20,000 withholding on the current payment that's due, and putting in, I would suggest a mill and redoing the slurry seal on Main Street from 2440 to 4th Street would need to be completed by June 1st of 2022. But I'm open to hearing any other discussion or input you folks might have.
Thanks, Mr. Brakovich. Council, do you have anything?
What kind of risks or concerns do we have about snow plows over the winter season in that stretch?
Sure. So that kind of gets into the technical mishap they had. So they delivered, part of slurry seal is you have aggregate or like gravel, for lack of a better term. That aggregate has to be of a certain size. And they have part of their equipment is kind of like a sifting machine that aggregate drops through, that mixture's added to it, and then they finish it by basically sweeping a burlap bag across the top of it. Why we think they ran into the problems on Main Street and not so much on North Star or Pleasant is when they delivered their aggregate, they dumped it on our lot next to the fire department, which has a gravel base. And so we think what happened is they were working their way through the aggregate, they eventually were digging too deep and probably grabbing some of that other gravel that was at a larger diameter or larger size. And so the next question was, well, how did that get through the sifter? Well, you might have a large rock, but it's a cylinder shape, and so if it stood up, it would fall through the sifter and hit and lay flat until they swept it with the burlap bag, which would leave it protruding a little bit. In talking to our staff, we think what's going to happen is when we plow that, we'll actually just shear that off the top, and it won't leave a void. Honestly, it'll probably make the street a little smoother, but we have other quality issues too, like the joints aren't done, they're not aesthetically pleasing, and it's not the quality, the owner admitted that's not the quality that they would be proud of, and that's why he offered to come back and mill it and redo that run.
Council, anyone, anything else?
Yeah, George, make sure that I understand that it's not gonna hurt us in any way. It is, I had quite a few people call me and say it's terrible, and I understand that, and it's not aesthetically pleasing. Did it damage the streets in any other way, or are we at risk? I mean, I sure can't see how it could be, but, you know, I think Jake's question was really good, that what's this thing do, but it won't hurt us in any way, other than it just doesn't look very good.
Correct. It doesn't. And really, when we look at street maintenance for that type of maintenance, we have like three options. Chip and seal, which when we do that, we get a lot of complaints.
Yep.
We tried asphalt rejuvenation, which was more of the clear liquid, but then you have to use a little bit of sand until that cures, and we got a lot of complaints about that. So I thought Mr. Heskett did a great job of researching options, and I still think slurry seal, based on the price and if it's applied correctly, is a fantastic option because it gives people that dark surface appearance, so it does look like we got a new surface and it's not just a sealant. But there were application errors here, but it doesn't really cause any other problem, other than a rough ride or the appearance. The other thing that we could factor into this is, we knew we had some asphalt condition issues in certain sections, especially on Main Street. And so, again, just applying the sealant over the top of that is the expectation that it should have just made every surface completely smooth. Maybe that was a bit unrealistic. But again, I think we're getting down into a quality issue and as opposed to a safety issue. And I think it's what we're hanging our hat on the withholding and the redo is it's not acceptable quality to us.
Anyone else? I still believe in the product. When it's done well, it looks great. I think that Mr. Heskett and city staff did a great job of finding that for us. Just it's terribly unfortunate that it turned out the way that it did, and I appreciate you going after him to get some sort of fix to the whole thing. What is it you would like from us?
Well, I would like to provide notice to the contractor so he understands he's not going to get paid in full. But part of that notice needs to include what we intend to do. So again, staff opinion would be withhold $20,000 and that they need to mill and redo that section of Main Street by June 1st, 2022.
Sounds good to me. Everybody else? I like waiting until after the first of the year because I want to see what Pleasant ends up doing after a couple of snowplows on it. So, all right. Do you feel like you have direction, sir?
And as long as that's good legally, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, item G, Resolution 112104, consider approval of purchase contract for approximately 2.41 acres of land. Mr. Brakovich?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Real quick before I forget to introduce him, we have Ross Wheeler here tonight. He's with Colby Capital, who is the proposed purchaser of this property. Quick history on this. This is old KDOT right-of-way that they declared surplus property. I think before I started working at the city, there were a couple of attempted auctions on this property by KDOT. But in 2017, we engaged with them, stating that the city had interest in acquiring that. And so we were able to close on that property in early 2018. We've spent a few years marketing the property. During some of our discussions, spring retreat, anytime surplus property owned by the city has come up, it's always kind of been our intent to try to draw a retail sales tax producer to the site. And so Colby Capital represents a retailer that's looking for an expansion. And so for us, within the contract, we're specifying who that retailer is. And so we have a current Dollar General. It's about a 9,000 square foot store. Dollar General's looking to expand to a new concept store called the Dollar General Market, which adds fresh grocery components and an expanded refrigerated frozen section that takes the store to close to 13,000 square feet. And so for the city of Tonganoxie, that the current Dollar General is our third highest retail sales tax producer. So the thought of being able to keep that store open, expand their footprint, increase, again, on a sales per square foot, what they would generate from a sales tax perspective, we think it's a good fit for the site. The site does propose some challenges. We've done some pre-development meetings to see how it would fit on the site and how it would incorporate to the location, and we've got some residential and a church location to the rear, and how by design could that be a good fit for the store. And the folks on the development team have been amenable to all the suggestions that we've placed on them in those early planning meetings, and so they would like to secure this purchase option on the property. Kind of give you some quick details on it. Their proposed purchase price is $220,000. It does include a $10,000 earnest money deposit that's non-refundable in case the deal falls apart, and that helps the city cover some of our costs. But essentially, they get about 150 days, an inspection period, which a lot of that legwork's already been done. To move through the process. So it's city approvals, but KDOT's also involved because it's right off of 2440. It wouldn't have direct access to 2440 based on KDOT's input on the corridor access management plan. So the site would be served off of Smiley Road. And it still would have to go through the very public process of all the planning approvals, but this gets the property secured so that they can feel comfortable moving forward, that it's not going to sell it to somebody else during this period that we're seeking approvals. I'm sure Ross would be happy to answer any other questions. Colby Capital, I know, represents DG in a lot of markets. I think they've done 200 plus stores. So they are entrenched in that, and we're kind of excited for what we see for Dollar General markets. Just kind of Googling the image and what those stores look like. They are considerably different than what's here now. And so staff is recommending that we move forward with the proposal. Anna had a chance to review it, and we've been kind of going back and forth for about a month or so just to make sure the language is right. And I'm sure Anna would be happy to answer any legal questions that I didn't address. Thank you for your consideration.
I missed your last name, sir, but would you like to speak about the project at all?
My name is Ross Wheeler. Like George said, I work for Colby Capital over in Overland Park, and this store would be, the existing store is 9,100 square feet, like he spoke about. The new store would be 12,640 square feet, which would be additional grocery mostly. And then we would meet all city regulation for design, as well as putting a privacy fence to shield from both the church and the property behind it.
Okay. Any questions, council?
In Colby, it has really nothing to do with operating the store after the sale. It's building the building, presenting it to DG, and then DG takes off, and somebody else will, either you or Colby will own the building, they'll rent it from you, or you'll sell it to somebody else.
Yes, sir. I think in this case, we would most likely retain ownership of this
Okay,
property.
and so, but you wouldn't have any say in the operation of the store?
No, sir.
That's Dollar General, okay. So thank you. And just really for Anna, we had a conversation about, is there any ramifications to the city on windfall or for net difference? We got something for one thing, and so we don't have any ramifications whatsoever that you can see.
No, I was not aware of anything that would make that an issue, and I also had a couple of colleagues who researched this thoroughly just to confirm that, and they found nothing.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I have one for George. The property is already zoned for the intended use. Is that correct?
Correct. It's general business district, which would allow this use.
Okay, thank you.
And does KDOT have access, management input?
Yes, so we had the KDOT engineer participated in our pre-development meeting. So when our city engineer, city planner, other city staff were able to provide input, the KDOT engineer gave direction as well. So there's some issues KDOT has with the site. There's, you can imagine a KDOT owned right of way for 50, 60 years. So we've worked through those. There's also a stormwater, piece that KDOT wants a little extra look at, and one other item, a traffic study, I think is what the KDOT engineer wanted. So the site's good for now, the intersection there, it's on the curve, it's at a reduced speed limit. I think the traffic study just wants to look at growth in Tonganoxie over the next 20 years or so to make sure that that intersection stays safe. And so Colby's been good about agreeing to all of those requirements that were placed on him.
That's a pretty high profile spot. We discussed this a little bit, but I'd like to see some extra attention paid to landscaping if that's possible. It's a very prominent area, and it's almost an entrance in a way.
Yeah, we've conveyed that as we went through some of our planning and what would be required in screening for rooftop units. I mean, all the way from building facade to how do we screen the neighbors. And, would be if we move forward with the approval here, we'd certainly want to try to work with Colby to address any of the neighbors' concerns in advance of just going to like a planning meeting and saying, here's what it's going to look like. So.
Great. All right, thank you. Council, is there any more conversation about this? If not, I would entertain a motion.
You got it on your screen, Chris?
Yeah, I've got it. I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 1121-04, approving and authorizing real estate contract between the city of Tonganoxie and Colby 2021 LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Donlin.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Hempel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously. That
Thanks
moves
for your
us.
investment in Tonganoxie.
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
City manager agenda.
Thanks, Mayor. So just one item tonight, it's the financial report, and I will do my best to honor Mr. Porter's hard work on putting these together. And I did have a chance to talk to him, and so he gave me some professional pointers on what to really point out to you. So it should be in a format that you're familiar in seeing. We wanted to point out a couple of things, though, on the executive summary. We talked about the ARPA funds a little bit earlier tonight, and in between drafting the policy to get ready for the agenda packet, we did find out that we're actually going to get a little bit extra money. So there were a few cities and counties that weren't in a position to accept the ARPA funds. So those got returned to the state, then the state reallocated those. And what that really means for us is we're getting about an extra $5,000. So in the same fashion that our $846,000 was split evenly by getting some of that allocated this year and some of it allocated next year. But again, those funds don't need to be expended until December of 2024. We'll get that $5,000 split into $2,500 this year, $2,500 next year. The other item that's highlighted or in bold on this report is we were happy to bring to your attention that the West Village project had advanced far enough that we have that moderate income housing grant. It's a $400,000 grant that was given by the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation. And we put in milestones in agreement with KHRC that project had to get certain milestones to get releases of that 400,000. And they met all of the initial milestones to get that first $100,000 released. And so, what happens is KHRC releases those funds to us, and then we in turn release it to the developer based on our development agreement with them. So we're happy to see that project progress. You'll see updates on the major fund revenues and fund expenditures, nothing of note really. Revenue performance, we continue strong revenue performance. We're nearly at 100% on our projected property tax. We've had our last remittance come in at the end of October, and that's just not accounted for here, but that'll push us to 100% or even over. Sales tax continues to be strong. As of October, we were already over 100%. We're at basically 111% of general fund revenue and 105% of capital projects, and then 113% of the infrastructure sales tax. So we continue to see strong compensating use taxes. So folks are still kind of, again, ordering items, and then sales tax is collected at the point of delivery. One other item to follow up on Mr. Donnelly's question previously about special highway fund revenue and specifically how large development projects might impact that. You'll see that Mr. Porter provided a table that accounts for 3 different revenues that go into there: the state fuel tax, the city excise fee for new development activity, and then what we transfer over from our infrastructure sales tax to cover things like the extended street maintenance program that we've been doing for the last 5 years. And so you'll see how in the narrative there, Mr. Porter accounted specifically for the Hills project and the $268,000 and some change that they paid for in excise fees. But essentially, Mr. Donnelly, to answer your question you had before, if we backed out the Hills, we would still be tracking at 100% of budget forecast. So that money that Hills paid in, I don't know if this is a bad pun or bad term, but is gravy over our budgeted numbers. So very strong performance. We did see a bit of a spike in 2020, and we think that was attributed to the schoolyard townhomes. I just didn't have enough time to track all that back down, but that is kind of, sometimes when we come with a development proposal, we talk about other ways that those projects impact the city and revenues that are made available, and we don't always have a full projection on what those are, but it's nice to be able to provide that kind of level of detail in these monthly financials. And then really our budget 2021 budget initiatives report, really we've checked every box that's either we've completed or at least started those initiatives. The one item that's left is the $4,500 for new directional signage, and we just need to coordinate with Mr. Heskett to see where that is, and we feel confident we'll have something to report on that before the end of the year.
Thank you, George. Any questions?
I do want to make a statement, and I think on the village, the West Village multifamily project, you have in here Department of Commerce grant, but I think it's Kansas Housing Resources Corporation.
It is, yeah.
And I just want to make a public note. I serve on that board as a board member, along with Kansas Development Finance Authority, so I just want to make sure I get that out as public. I don't know if it means anything, because the board doesn't have any statement in that grant.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that it's public, that I'm on the board of that.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you.
Okay, is that everything?
Yes, thanks for your time on that.
Awesome, thank you, Mr. Brakovich. City Attorney agenda, Ms. Kirchlich.
No items, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem agenda.
I think the only thing I have to report, there's gonna be a work session, Wednesday about 10:45 with the county commissioners and the planning commission of Leavenworth County. And we're gonna be working on a comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Anyone else, council?
Go ahead, Jake.
I wanted to, I mentioned, I think it was last time, the street light issue. And I just had a question. Do we know if, as the white street lights age, will they start turning purple? Do we know that yet?
The issue with the purple light is a defect in only the lights that were updated to the LED system. I don't believe that they went through and changed every fixture to the LEDs. And then, I'm sorry if we didn't give you an update, but we did Sergeant Reyes with the PD was here that night, and so we did verify we have two, what we're referring to as purple haze lights. And we did confirm that Evergy is aware of those, and we are, like other cities, on the list of
Sure. I
repairs.
just was curious if it's just gonna stay those two, or if over time, these will start turning purple haze.
Yeah, that's a good question, Mr. I wish I knew exactly how many street lights Evergy converted over to LED. I certainly notice in other communities, there are many lights in a particular development area that have that purple tint to it. So, we can certainly do that as a follow-up, but see if Evergy gave us an idea of how many street lights we have that might have the potential to change over time.
That's a great question, Jake, because there are about 15 purple lights on Massachusetts and Lawrence. Not complaining, that place could use more purple, go state, but that's a good
Well,
question.
and it made me think when Sergeant Reyes went out and reported that there was the second one, I hadn't seen that one, and then it made me wonder if it turned purple. If something as it's about to go out, or as it's 50% done with its life, that it, deteriorated into that state.
Yeah.
And it is a deterioration.
And the inferior lighting,
And then,
yes.
we're talking about, well, we've only got two and Evergy's working to replace them. And that could be just the beginning of a bigger issue with a lot more of them turning purple as they get older. So was just kind of an idea of maybe, is there something we need to stay ahead of?
Yeah. I don't know if to my knowledge and my understanding, there's no sort of preventative maintenance we can do. I think it's just, if it's the defect, it turns purple. And I don't know if there's a certain time in the lifespan or usage rate that it does that. But I think it is a good point to at least have an understanding of how many of those LED conversion units we do have, and that way we know probably worst case scenario if they all ever turn. But I will try to get a better understanding from Evergy. And like I said, I know our staff have reached out on a few occasions, and I think the technical answer we get is it's a defect in the LED bulb. And we're aware.
The end.
Yeah, and they claim they have a plan. I just, I haven't seen the ones in Lawrence, but I've certainly seen some in Eudora, some in Baser, and so I think, again, just simply getting an idea of how many of them there are that have the potential, that's a good idea.
It's nationwide.
Is it?
Yeah, seriously, it is. It's all over.
I'm sure it is if it's a defect in the bulb itself, so.
Anyone else? Mayor's agenda, spoke about it already, really. It'd be great if y'all came to the Christmas tree lighting. Ms. Gee, can I impose upon you to tell us a little bit about the Business Expo tomorrow? And maybe just tell us how Spooktacular went.
Monica Gee, 17685, 214th Street, Tonganoxie. Spooktacular, Miss McCutcheon was part of that. It was amazingly busy.
So busy.
People started lining up like in a line, standing there like they were in class waiting in line about 5:30. And we don't start till 6, so it stayed busy until about 10 till 8. And I don't know very many people who had candy left. So it was thousands of kids again, so that was nice. The Business Expo, actually, Ms. Stevens is the head of that, and we have over 20 businesses that will be at Brunswick Ballroom tomorrow night. There's door prizes. We have 4 food vendors from here in town that are bringing and donating food. Wine is being donated. So basically, come check out what businesses are there, have goodies, have a good time. Kind of know something about a business without having to walk in all of 20 of them separately. And then we have nonprofits who will be there as well. We set up tables for them as well. Am I forgetting anything off the top of my head? I don't think so.
Cool. Thank
It's a
you.
really fun event, so. And it's put on between the Baser High School Business Club and Tonganoxie Business Club. They work together, helping Ms. Stevens put it together. So
That's cool.
we're using high school students for that. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Gee. Downtown, we're down to 2 storefronts that are empty. That's the most, I think, businesses we've had downtown since I've lived here. It's pretty impressive, the work that's been done.
Yeah.
I have nothing further. Mr. Dale,
I make a motion to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. See you next time.